From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The average death rate in the city during normal times is between 360 to 380 people a day. Today, we have around 700.
Record heat in Russia doubles the death rate in Moscow to hundreds a day. Wildfires in Russia, floods in Pakistan and China, drought in Niger. We'll speak with meteorologist Jeff Masters. Are the world's diplomats any closer to a binding agreement on climate change? We'll talk to Bolivia's ambassador to the United Nations, Pablo Salón. He's just back from a round of negotiations in Bonn. Then to Latin America.
The word war is not in my vocabulary when I think of Colombia's relations with its neighbors or any other country on the planet.
Colombia's new president, Juan Manuel Santos, is meeting with Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez today. Is this a new beginning on the continent? We'll speak with Latin American historian Greg Grandin about this and other developments in Latin America. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United Nations says the number of people suffering from the massive floods in Pakistan has now exceeded 13 million, more than the combined total of people affected by the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the 2005 Kashmir earthquake, and the 2010 Haiti earthquake combined, though the death toll in Pakistan is far lower. The UN says just under 300,000 homes have been destroyed or damaged, almost the same as those destroyed in Haiti. At least 1,600 people have died in Pakistan. 2 million have been left homeless. The Islamic Relief Charity says the floods have destroyed the entire infrastructure of parts of Pakistan. Michael O'Brien works for the International Committee of the Red Cross in Pakistan.
I would say that early on, the scope of this disaster might have been a little underestimated. It's really quite catastrophic in its proportions, and it's going to have a long-term impact. But in terms of the international community, I think they're probably aware of the problem now. The issue is no country would have coped easily with the extent of the damage that's been caused here. It's just enormous.
In technology news, Google and Verizon have issued a proposal that could radically restructure the Internet by essentially creating a two-tiered Internet system. At first glance, the Google and Verizon proposal appears to promote the idea of net neutrality, that users should have equal access to all types of information online. But the Google and Verizon proposal includes a massive loophole that would exempt from net neutrality protections all Internet access over cell phone and wireless networks and any future new subscription services that broadband providers could provide. Jason Rosenbaum is with the Progressive Change Campaign Committee.
The Google and Verizon deal announced today is the first step towards corporate control over the Internet. They propose creating two tiers of Internet service, a public version of the Internet that everybody will be able to use without fear of discrimination, and then a private version that the big corporations will control. Absolutely. And that's the version that they're likely going to put all of their investment in. So when it comes down to it, people in America will have a choice. They'll be able to use the corporate-controlled Internet, where they'll get their information from corporate sources very quickly, or they'll be able to use the quote-unquote public Internet, and that's going to be relegated to the slow lane.
Craig Aaron of the group Free Press says the Google plan could permanently shift who controls the Internet.
The beauty of the Internet is that you're able to get online, go wherever you want, do whatever you want, download whatever you want. And if you're a content creator, then you have the opportunity to have the reach of a television station or a radio station or a cable channel. All you have to have is that good idea or something interesting to say. But if you change the way the Internet works, if you reserve that fast lane just for a few select companies, that opportunity goes away.
Jason Rosenbaum of the Progressive Change Campaign Committee says he also has concerns about the impact of the Google-Verizon proposal on free speech online.
Already seen how corporate control over networks can lead to political discrimination. So there was a text message sent out by NARAL Pro-Choice that was blocked by wireless carriers because the wireless carriers disagreed with the message. When you have internet activities or various online activities running on a corporate-controlled network, you're opening the door to this kinds of censorship. It's very much a free speech issue, very much a civil rights issue.
In military news, Defense Secretary Robert Gates has outlined a plan to slightly reduce the Pentagon's record $500 billion annual budget. Gates is proposing to reduce spending on private contractors, to close the Joint Forces Command in Norfolk, Virginia, and eliminate 50 generals and admirals and 150 top civilian posts over 2 years. The closure of the Joint Forces Command would result in thousands of job losses. Gates did not say how much money the budget cuts will save, but it will be only a small fraction of the Pentagon's overall budget, which has doubled since 2001. Even with the proposed cuts, the Pentagon's budget's expected to rise again next year by just under 2% to $549 billion, not including the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The United Nations is reporting civilian casualties have risen by 31% in the first half of 2010, a much sharper rise than the recent estimate by an independent Afghan human rights body. The UN report blamed the Taliban and other militant groups for 3/4 of the killings. The number of children killed or injured over the past 6 months has jumped by 55%. Staffan de Mistura of the United Nations said, quote, "Afghan children and women are increasingly bearing the brunt of the conflict." Meanwhile, the UN said the U.S. and NATO killed 223 civilians in the first 6 months, a lower tally than in the first 6 months of last year. Released the names of its medical aid workers who were killed in Afghanistan last week in an ambush. The attack against the Christian charity has been described as the worst crime targeting the humanitarian community that has ever taken place in Afghanistan. The dead included optometrist Dr. Tom Little, 61, of Delmar, New York, 32-year-old Cheryl Beckett of Owensville, Ohio, Dan Terry, 63, of Janesville, Wisconsin, 40-year-old Glenn Lapp of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, 25-year-old freelance videographer Brian Cardarelli of Harrisonburg, Pennsylvania, and the 51-year-old dentist Thomas Grams of Durango, Colorado. The dead also included 2 Afghans named Mahram Ali and Jawad, Daniela Bayer of Germany, and Dr. Karen Wu of Britain. The International Assistance Mission has worked in Afghanistan since 1966. Up until last week, the group had lost just 4 international staff members. In other Afghan news, General David Petraeus is preparing to launch a public relations campaign to build up support for the war effort. He's scheduled to do a series of high-profile interviews in the coming weeks, beginning with Meet the Press on Sunday. In news from Guantánamo, a U.S. military judge has ruled that Canadian prisoner Omar Khadr's confessions to interrogators can be used as evidence against him in his trial, even though Khadr's lawyers say the statements were illegally obtained through torture and cruelty. Khadr's attorney, Dennis Edney, criticized the judge's decision.
Well, my reaction is that Judge Parrish should go back to school and learn some of the basic principles of law. I guess what he says is it's okay for a young 15-year-old boy who's picked up off the battlefield in an environment that's hostile, and it's okay to threaten him with rape and sexual abuse.
Omar Khadr's trial on charges including murder and terrorism conspiracy is due to start today. Khadr is a 23-year-old Canadian citizen who's already spent a third of his life in the Guantánamo prison camp. His trial will be the first war crimes tribunal anywhere since World War II to prosecute someone for acts allegedly committed as a juvenile. He was captured in Afghanistan at the age of 15. In an attempt to combat the increasing violence resulting from drug trafficking, former Mexican President Vicente Fox has come out in favor of legalizing drugs in both Mexico and the United States. Fox described legalization as a strategy to strike and break the economic structure that allows the mafias to generate huge profits in their business. Fox went on to say, quote, "What is happening is that this huge market of the United States in drug consumption, the largest in the world, is generating the weapons that are sold to Mexican cartels and is generating the money that is laundered in the United States and brought to Mexico." It's estimated 28,000 people have been killed in the drug war in Mexico since 2006. In news from the Gulf of Mexico, an increasing number of oiled wildlife are being discovered despite recent assertions by BP that just a quarter of the leaked oil remains in the Gulf. The Times-Picayune reports almost double the daily average of oiled birds are now being collected.